idea for the company born?
It was actually born here in Chicago, and where we were at a lab together. Andrew and I were both working at a lab together here in Chicago called UI Labs. And I was working on a project for smart cities for the city of Chicago. And we were trying to find a technology solution to use for stormwater management. And we kind of all looked at each other and said, well, who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? And that's sort of how things worked as far as trying to find a technology solution. And we thought, well, that's kind of a weird way where just people are just kind of calling on their personal networks or doing Google searches to try to find a technology, particularly these more innovative technologies, to use on this project. And so the original thought was about collecting pilot information around different technologies and how cities are using them. And that kind of snowballed into any technology that cities are using, and how in having a database of that information. So.
When was Marketplace.nyc established and by whom?
So it was first established by one of our co-founders who had a company called Fictive Kin that was working with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation. And they created this as a pilot for New York City to collect information about vendors for city employees to be able to peruse and view and browse. And so, they started that project, built it first as a prototype, and then we spun it out into its own independent company in 2017.
When did you know what was working in New York might be extendable to other cities?
A lot of the cities came to us, and that was one of the most exciting things about launching the company was, and really why I think Andrew and I signed on full time, is that we had discussed this idea in Chicago, so we knew the city of Chicago needed it, and then we paired up with our other co-founder Cameron, who was doing this for New York City, and we thought, okay, well, two of the biggest cities in the country need it, and then those, the leaders in those cities start bringing in other people in other cities. So before we knew it, we had a lot of cities who were willing to be kind of launch partners with us and sort of go on this journey with us.
When did the company become Marketplace.city?
So I'd say that, when we wanted to spin it out from Marketplace.nyc, NYC obviously was just a New York City domain. And so, we sort of kept with the tradition of using that domain that was sort of, unique, and, there happened to be a domain for cities.city. And so we kept Marketplace because it's, such a, sort of popular word to use in titling the company, but, could put the .city spin on there so that it would be open to all cities. But, frankly, it's open to all cities, counties, states, really any local government that wants to participate.
What unique skills or background do the principals of the company bring?
Well, that's a great question. So I think that, Andrew and I and Cameron, we're not fresh out of college founders. We all sort of bring a history of careers into the company. So we've all been working for, at least 10, 15 years before we launched the company. So, from my experience came, working for a software company, running a software company, launching a business in the public sector, and really kind of experiencing everything that the vendors on our platform go through and trying to do business with the government, but also observing on the other side everything that governments go through in trying to bring in new technologies. So we were considered kind of cutting edge technology with my last company, and we would see the struggles that governments would go through trying to bring our technology in-house. And oftentimes, the government leaders would sort of pull us aside and say, who do you know that does this? Or who do you know that does that? All these new different technologies that they're trying to bring in, and they just didn't really have resources other than the internet to go and kind of find, what was out there. And even so, they had a hard time identifying what cities were actually using. So apart from looking at someone's website, actually seeing what technologies have been deployed in other cities around the country or around the world, what's working, so the outcomes of those deployments, what they actually paid for those technologies, and then what contract vehicles they purchased it from.
How has the company grown?
It's grown a lot over the last few years. So we launched in 2017, and kind of on the first day we launched our product, we won an award at the conference we were at in Barcelona that was for having the most innovative product of the show. So we released our product and we won, one of the major awards of the conference. That's the biggest conference in our whole industry. And from there, we onboarded a lot of new companies that were publishing their products in the marketplace, a lot of new cities that were publishing. So we added a lot of functionality for the cities to share information about what they're buying and what they're using. But what's been most exciting is over the last year to year and a half, where we developed more of a white glove service for the local governments to manage their procurements. Because we found that the data will only take you so far. You actually have to consume that data. You have to use it to make a purchasing decision. And so we now have the Clearbox process, which helps to guide the local governments through that purchasing decision.
What were some of the early successes of the company?
So I think that our first, big success was finding New York City. It's not every day that companies can claim that they had New York City as like their first customer. It's really unique. And from there, being able to grow the team and to add new people on board, to add sort of new services to both both sides of the marketplace, the vendors and to the local governments, and then to see like true impact. So being able to help local governments really find new technologies, get them purchased, and then helping those technologies to find their markets and to grow and scale beyond that.
What makes the company unique?
Many things make us unique. I'll say, I often sort of, joke or, joke with myself that, it would have been so much easier if we just invented a single SaaS tool that could just be, licensed to the local governments. But we decided to create a marketplace, which is hard enough as it is because you have two customers, in the government space, which is a very hard area to transact, as a startup company. And so, I say we sort of, challenged ourselves, from the outset and along the way. So, and all those things kind of make us unique because even beyond that, we don't charge up front for what we do. We take fees when we have successes, no matter what, just when we're successful. So I think that's some very unique things about the company that a lot of people might not realize that that we've been able to kind of enjoy. So.
Where's the company headed strategically, or what is your long-term vision for the company?
So long-term vision is that we become a nationwide master contract for local government, and that's not just technology. We start in the technology realm. And it's such a dynamic space, and cities are trying to adopt new technologies all the time. But I often say that we drew a dotted line around technology when we focused on this area. We'd like to be able to expand into other areas beyond that. So governments spend an awful lot of money on construction. They spend an awful lot of money on commodities and on healthcare and things like that. So I see the companies being able to expand into other areas of purchasing, not strictly technology, and then other areas of government. There are a lot of cities around this world, around this country that are purchasing, but right now we're not doing anything in the federal government space. And I have a lot of experience in that area, and other members of our team have experience in that area as well, and then we'd like to potentially move there.
Talk about the company's focus on technology procurement and why that's fertile ground for the Marketplace.city business model.
Ask me that question one more time.
Talk about the company's focus on technology procurement and why that's fertile ground for the Marketplace.city business model.
So we focus on technology procurement because we've seen so many pilots or so many starts to new technology deployments that fail. And you see even like big investments in technology that will, people will put all kinds of money in, and then those will fail as well. And when you look back at it, they chose the wrong vendor, or they didn't do enough research. They didn't understand the market enough. They didn't do a big enough sort of market landscape, market research to see what other governments were doing. So that's why we really wanted to sort of pinpoint this technology procurement area. And then it's also just a pain point that I've experienced, throughout my entire career, that no matter how good your technology is, how well priced it is, how advanced it is, that you consistently run against the same procurement issues time and time again, and it limits a true innovator or developer's ability to scale. So if I want to actually build technology for the government, I have to consistently sort of reinvent my sales model to every single different city, county, small town that I'm selling to. So what it ends up doing is it slows down innovation within the market, really unintentionally, but also the way there's a structure in place today that almost forces the innovators and the developers of technology to sell through these existing channels, resellers, contractors, and what have you. And each one of those middlemen are like taking money out of the transaction. And so there's less left over for the manufacturers. So what we want to do is create direct transactions between the manufacturer and the government buyer. So the government buyer is getting more transparent information, and the manufacturer is getting more money out of the transaction.
What is the clear box?
So it is multiple things. It is both a evidence of work that vendors have done with other governments, but it also is the process that we use to help governments make their purchasing decisions. And so we take them through this process that involves creating scope, market landscape, solution and validation of potential vendors, and then building the justification for transactions. So for us, it's really kind of a white glove approach, almost a managed service for local governments to do technology procurement.
What are some of the biggest pain points that governments are trying to resolve that use the clear box?
It's this, I'm going to say, I don't know, there's just idleness of the technology space in a lot of governments. So governments are very risk averse, and so oftentimes they will start these projects and not finish them, or they won't be able to build enough sort of support of new technology initiatives. So I think that's an issue that we are trying to resolve and help the governments to resolve is creating more velocity in the transaction. So helping them to identify what the scope is, who the potential vendors are, what other people have done, and then build that justification for why they should buy internally.